An overview of ethical perspectives and frameworks. Ethics is the critical, philosophical study of moral choices. Choices, that is, that affect the well-being of human and other sentient life forms. Choices may or may not have an ethical dimension. For example, my decision to use £20 of the housekeeping budget to watch a football match could have an ethical dimension if money was tight. Moral choices are justified, supported with good reasons, in different ways. Different moral positions attempt to express the broader moral perspectives and vision that people acquire in various ways. For example, Terry's principled, as opposed to flippant, decision to support legislation, making it a criminal offence to have children if the necessary parenting skills and financial means are lacking, because Terry felt that such legislation would be in society's best interests, indicates that he believes it is the consequences of an act, in this case the legislation, that make it right or wrong. Consequentialism judges an act as right or wrong on the basis of its consequences. The best known type of consequentialist ethical theory is utilitarianism, famously set out by John Stuart Mill, 1806 to 73. According to this theory, an action is morally right if its consequences lead to happiness for the greatest number. Two problems are: it's not absurd to ask if an act that makes people happy is good, the naturalistic fallacy, and some acts seem to be bad in spite of their good consequences, people benefiting from medical experiments carried out on other people. This last objection leads us to a different ethical position called deontological ethics, that focuses not on consequences, but on the act itself. Some acts, deontology argues, are intrinsically good or bad, whatever their consequences. For this reason, they should be done or avoided. The Greek dei means one must, or it is one's duty to. There are several forms of duty-based ethics that emphasize the act and not the consequences, including Christian and Kantian ethics. One view of Christian ethics is that people have a duty to obey commands from God because they are divine, and not for other reasons. For Kant, there is the categorical requirement for us to carry out duties that are thoroughly rational. The one basic categorical imperative is that we should only act on maxims or principles that should apply to everyone. Only tell the truth to brown-eyed people is not a good maxim because it is irrational. That is, it rejects the very thing it presupposes, not because it has bad consequences. So far, these ethical theories have concentrated on acts that people should or should not perform for various reasons. One ancient ethical theory, called virtue theory, shifts the focus from the act to the person. The central ethical question, according to Aristotle, 384 to 322 BCE, is: how should we live if we are to be flourishing, fulfilled, happy human beings? Aristotle's answer in his Nicomachean Ethics is that only people who cultivate certain virtues will experience the state he calls eudaimonia, usually translated happiness. Virtue ethics tends to play down the importance of moral rules and principles, maintaining that morality should be understood in terms of inner virtues or strengths that cannot be simply translated into rules or goals. The virtuous person is one who is habitually equipped to make the right decision. Morality is not about looking up the right principle and then trying to apply it. A major problem with virtue theory, however, is determining which habits are to count as virtues. There is a real danger that people will simply canonize their own prejudices. For example, a promiscuous person will emphasize the need for serial relationships, the entrepreneur for financial speculation. A further philosophical problem is that virtue theory presupposes there is a single and unvarying human nature, and that virtues are universal. Some people believe that moral decisions can be guided by so-called natural law. Simply stated, this theory equates the good with the natural, that is, the way things naturally are. Someone who was opposed to vegetarianism might argue that, since humans share certain relevant features with other carnivores, it is unnatural for them to refrain from eating meat. So vegetarianism is wrong. Others will argue that it is natural for sexual relations to result in procreation. Therefore, same-sex relationships are unnatural and wrong. Those opposed to natural law ethics maintain that the theory is based on a mistake of equating facts and values. In other words, you cannot get from an ought to an is. No amount of information about the way the world is can lead to an ethical judgment, because facts and values are fundamentally different sorts of things. A different tack has been used by the French philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre. He's argued that there is no such thing as a fixed stock of characteristics called human nature. Existence precedes essence. In other words, we make ourselves through our choices, actions, preferences. Vegetarianism is a life choice, and so is being a carnivore. It's meaningless to say that one is natural and the other isn't. Finally, there is an ethical perspective that not only acknowledges the diversity of ethical perspectives, but also argues that no single perspective should be regarded as privileged or normative for the others. This view, moral relativism, regards morality as simply a description of the mores and values that apply in a particular society at a particular time. Moral judgments can only be relative to the norms that apply within a particular context. Stoning adulteresses is wrong is an inappropriate remark from a Westerner to make about capital punishment as practiced in another country. There are no universal values that apply across cultures. Such a view would be another perspective that could have no special privileges. Critics have pointed out that relativism contains a performative self-contradiction. The view that all values are relative is not held by a moral relativist to be relative, leading to the paradoxical position that if moral relativism is true, then it is false.